Oh, that was a great trip. It's good to be home. Oh, yeah. Time for me to get the pack off, sit down and kick back and relax. It's good to be home. So the hike is over. You made it back home. But it's not really time to kick back and relax. There's still some work to be done. On today's episode, I'd like to discuss some of the little housekeeping things that you should be doing upon returning to take care of your gear. I hope you'll join me. Welcome back, and thank you for joining me on The Wandering Drew. I am Drew. Today, I'd like to discuss some of the little housekeeping things that you should be doing to take care of your gear upon returning. I'm going to be discussing specifically taking care of your backpack. So, just because the trip is over and you've made it back home doesn't mean that the work is done. Doesn't mean there's nothing to do. We want to take care of our gear so that it can be ready for our next adventure and also provide us years of hiking enjoyment. Unfortunately, there's still some work to do. But in my opinion, it's easier than hiking up that mountain and won't require as much effort. But it is still something you need to do. And what it's going to involve is basically cleaning your gear, going through it, getting it ready for the next adventure by checking it and making sure that it's still working for you and that nothing on it is broken or worn out or needs replacement. Now, don't think this needs to be done as soon as you walk in the door. I personally do not do that. There have been times that I have done that, especially if I'm going back to work the next day and I know I'm not going to have time to address my gear over the next couple of days. But generally, I come home, like you, I put my gear down, but within a day or so of being home, I'm definitely going to be going through my gear, especially what's called the big three. The big three is your backpack, your tent, and your sleeping bag and probably sleeping pad. And those three items are the ones that I'm going to address in the next couple of videos. By dividing them up into 3 episodes, I think it cuts down on the size of the video. I don't think anybody wants to sit and watch an hour video. So I'm going to break them down. So today, I'm going to discuss your backpack. So as I said, anytime I'm going to be off trail for like a day or two, I'm usually going to do some sort of housekeeping items. My backpack can wait a little longer usually, but I'm not going to wait too long. If I'm going to be off trail or I'm done with a trip, when I come back within the first couple of days, I'm generally going to do these housekeeping items. And of all your gear, the big three, the most expensive and costly items that you have, and they're the ones that are generally going to need attention. Nothing else really. All your other gear is usually pretty routine and does not need to be maintained, kind of like we're talking about these items. I'm also doing this to safeguard my gear. And when I say safeguard, what I mean is I want to make sure that I protect it, because it's very easy to put your gear down, forget about it, and not realize that some things could be happening to it. In the case of if it's dirty or damp, especially if it's damp, you worry about mildew growing. If you have food in there, depending on the temperature, it could melt. You could have stuff that's leaking out. You know, when you're on the trail, you obviously take a risk as you're hiking every day, but generally you're going through your gear every day. When you stop at night, you're going through it and you're repacking in the morning, so you have a good idea what's going on in your pack. It's only going to be a couple of hours, but if you put your pack down and you're home for 3-4 days, that's a long time if something is going wrong in it for it to get really bad, or to the point that you cannot really recover that item and make it usable. So when I have the chance, I like to go through my gear, open it up, pull everything out of it, and inspect it. And I'm going to start with my backpack. It's the easiest thing to do. It's usually the thing that's holding everything else that we're talking about, including your tent and your sleep system, is usually enclosed or strapped to your backpack. So in order to get to it, you have to open up your backpack anyway. So to me, it just makes sense to start with my backpack. So the first thing I generally do is I take off my backpack and I place it somewhere where I'm gonna go through it. And for me, that's somewhere outside. I never bring, or I should say, I very rarely, if ever, bring my gear directly into my house. I find the place outside. I'm doing this out here. It's on my patio area. It's enclosed with screens. I'm not worried about my gear if I leave it here. Matter of fact, it's been sitting here for 2 days since I just returned from my trip on the Pinhoti Trail. But it's covered, so it's protected from the weather in terms of the sun and rain. And that's what I'm really concerned at. But it is exposed to temperatures. So if it's really hot during the summer, you might want to take that into account. Or if it's really cold during the winter and you have to worry about stuff freezing, you want to take that into account as well. So don't just leave your gear out here if it's going to be harsh conditions for it. But I don't want to do this in my house. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, my gear generally smells from the trail. It's usually pretty stinky from my sweat and just being out on the trail. Sometimes it smells like a campfire if it was by a fire. But more importantly, I just don't want to bring my dirty gear into my house because I have, there could be twigs and leaves and other stuff stuck on it. Also, I'm worried about bringing any unwanted guests into my house. It is not uncommon for some type of bug or insect to get a free ride in your gear. So it's sometimes unknown to us, there may be an unwanted hitchhiker in our pack. It could be something like a tick. It could be a spider. It could be just something, an ant. It could be a snake though, or a lizard, or a scorpion, or who knows what. I just don't want to bring that into my house. Additionally, a lot of the gear, since it was packed up in the field, depending on the conditions you were in, it might have dirt or dust on it. There might be a lot of leaves that were stuffed inside when you were putting stuff away. And I don't want to generally pull that out and dump that onto my house on the floor, especially if it's something that's alive that could scurry and now it's in my house and it's a concern for me. So even if I do bring a snake or a lizard, it's outside my house. So I like that. So beside the smell of the gear, I don't want the dirt or the unwanted guests gaining access to my house. So for that reason is why I do it out here. So like I said, find a location that is outside your house, but is protected from the elements. Obviously, I wouldn't want to do this, and I have done it outside in the grass, but I would not recommend doing that unless you put something down like a tarp or something, because you're going to be dumping stuff out and pulling all your items out. And if you have something small, there's a good chance that it may drop into the grass and be lost. Even on a patio, like a porch with wood, if there's slats in there, you don't want something to fall through, something tiny that could fall through a slat, and now you have to go climb underneath your house into the crawl space and go get it. So this is a concrete floor. I don't have to worry about it. It does have a carpet area in it. So even if it was like a porch with slats, I would probably do it just on the carpeted area. If you need to, you can put a tarp out or something else that you could put all your stuff on. So at least you're not going to lose items. They're all self-contained and they're not going to fall through. A garage floor would be a good idea. Out front of your house, even on a porch or a driveway, would be another option. But I don't want to sit in the sun. It's not going to take me very long to do this, but I don't want to be outside in bright sunlight, for 10, 15 minutes and get a sunburn or anything like that. So I generally like to do it here. If I get interrupted or I want to stop, or if it's raining outside even, I can still do it and I'm protected. Additionally, I like doing it outside because later on I am going to take my pack and put it outside in the sun. So I'm already outside now, so it's very close at hand. And that's going to be a little controversial for some people, but I'll discuss my reasons for it a little later. What I'm going to do is basically unload this pack. I am going to take everything out of the pack. I am going to go through every pocket, every zippered pouch, everything. There will be nothing left inside this pack when I'm done. I'm going to totally take out everything, including any additional bags or liners. Anything that's in there is all coming out. And there's multiple reasons for doing this. One, it forces me to make sure that the pack is entirely empty and I haven't left anything inside there that could cause it harm. Anything that could leak, or that could smell, or that could stain it, something that could have food or moisture in there, or mildew can grow. By doing this, I know that the pack is now empty and is not at risk of getting any damage if I leave it sitting for a while. If you leave food in there, and I myself have found a candy bar left in a zipper pocket on a hip belt that wasn't eaten, if that thing leaks, not only do you have to worry about insects or bugs coming there or something growing with it, but usually that will melt, and if there's grease or fat or oil, it will stain the material, and that's not going to come out. You're not going to be able to get that out. And depending on how long it sits until you use it again, it could be quite an expensive lesson learned, because if it does grow into something like mildew or something, you're going to have that smell for a very long time. It's very hard to get rid of a mildew smell once it sets in. If you stick this in your garage and you don't use your pack for 6 months or 8 months or a year even, just think of the damage that potentially could be happening to it from something leaking, especially something like fuel or oil or fat from a candy bar. And if there's insects that find it or come in to get that, they may have set up a nest in your sleeping bag or inside your pack that is going to be very challenging for you to overcome in the future. So it's just easier to do it now and not run that risk. So it's very easy to leave a wrapper from trash or food in there and not go through all the pockets, but I suggest you do it in an orderly manner. Take everything out, dump it all out, and go through it. It also forces you to go through all your equipment because you're touching each item. And this gives you a chance to really assess what you brought on the trip, whether it served you well, and it needs to go back in the backpack for the next trip. A lot of times I'll find something and I forget I even had it, or maybe it was misplaced, it was put in the wrong pocket. So when I'm looking for it again, I realize that it's not where it needed, I can't find it, and I get frustrated. And it's my fault because maybe packing up in a hurry during rain or just to get out of the campsite, you put it in the wrong place. Now you can't find it. And it's better to put everything back when you load everything back in your backpack where you like to have it and where you know it is, so I can remember that for the future. Additionally, depending on what your plans are in the future, if you know you have a hike coming up, you may repack the bag. If you know you're not going to be going hiking or you have no plans on going back on trail for several weeks or months, you might decide to leave the backpack alone, empty, with nothing in it. So it's up to you, and it preps it for longer storage if needed, or for more immediate use if you're going back out on trail. And I'm not just worried about candy bars. I've had things like electrolyte packets, drink mixes, even batteries. Sometimes they get moist or damp from the trail. You leave them in your pack and they'll rust or leak into a pocket. The same thing with my light, my headlamp. I don't just leave it in the pocket where it could leak. I generally want to open it up, take it out. Maybe I want to replace the batteries because I use the light a lot over this trip and I already know that they're going to need replacement for another trip. So these are all things that going through your gear forces you to really go through your gear and deal with it and address it, rather than kicking that can down the road and not doing anything for it, and then being sadly disappointed when you grab your backpack the next time and find trouble with it. So I've relocated to the floor where I'm going to take my pack now and go through every pocket and unpack everything. And what this will do is this will force me to do what I said, which is go through every item and see what needs to be maybe looked at, worked on, cleaned further, but what worked for me, what didn't work for me. So I start with the outside pockets generally, and I'm just taking everything and I'm just going to put it in a pile here. I'm not really worried about stuff now. I just want to locate, and you can already see, at least I can see on my stuff, there's little leaves, bits of dirt from the trail. I even have a twig, even on the straps there, I'm seeing a little bit of dirt. So I'm going through there. Here's a water bottle. I'm just trying to orderly go through the outside, each pocket, and make sure I have all my items and I'm taking them out. So if I can, I'm getting all the dirt out of it also. There's a lot of little leaves here. that are coming out from the pockets or from the pockets because they get dragged on the floor or dropped into the floor of the woods or the forest. Here, you can even see here, there's all different. So I don't want that in my house. So that's the reason why I do it out here. So I'm going to fast forward while I unpack it. I'll keep the camera running, but just to show you what I do. Now on my last trip, it got cut short due to an injury, and I didn't really unpack my pockets from all the food that I was planning on using that day and all the drink mixes. So all that was still in my pocket. If I left this to sit for, let's say, a week or two, this would all be out here. Perhaps maybe some insects or bugs would find it, and that could be a problem for me. Okay, so I've emptied out all the pockets on the exterior. Now I'm going to go into the interior. You will note that a lot of these pockets have zippers. So for the zippers, you want to make sure they're clean of dirt. If you have a little nylon brush, like a little scrub brush, I'm looking at the bottom. This is the part that usually gets dirty because it's sat on the floor all the time, or this lays in the dirt. So I'm looking through to see if there's anything that's dirty. I'm also looking through as I open up the zippers. Is there any zipper that's really dirty, or is it sticking or binding? Is it not moving freely? Is there dirt inside the teeth? If there are, I want to clean that out. There's a couple of ways that you can clean it. You can use like a bristle brush, a nylon bristle brush, and brush it out. I mean, I can use my hand as well. But if it's a little inside the little teeth, you might want to take that brush, run it through. If you want, you can use water or regular, just plain water. You can use soap and water. Be careful about using anything like certain soaps because you don't want to make any residue on your backpack because that could attract dirt and also an odor in the future for if you're going back out. But you really don't want it to attract dirt. And you never want to lubricate any of these zippers with anything like WD-40 or oil or something like that. So that's going to leave a stain. It's going to smell, and it's also going to attract dirt further into the zippers, so you don't want to do that. If you have a zipper that's sticking, there are products that are made. I know some people use graphite. I don't want that because it leaves dirt, but it doesn't collect any. It's not an oil that attracts stuff. I like to use beeswax. This is a product called CB. It's a zipper lube made with natural beeswax. And what you can do is you can run it along the teeth, and just a small bit of it will get caught in those teeth. And this is made for like wetsuits. They use these on wetsuits and dry bags and stuff like that. And I happened to pick this up. I bought this on Amazon a couple years ago. It's got 2 blocks like this. They're like little combs. You can buy stuff. Sometimes at a farmer's market, you can buy beeswax. You don't have to go online and do it. You can use a candle even, just regular wax. I've even heard people using soap, like a quality soap, like a bar soap, like an Ivory or something that doesn't have residue. I would, if you can, pick something that doesn't have a fragrance in it, because you don't want to, and there you go. And then you just want to work it into the zipper. You don't want to use something with a fragrance because you don't want it to smell in the future when you're out camping or to attract animals with its odor. You know, if it's flowery, it's going to probably wear off, but I would just avoid using that. Don't use anything that's too sticky or tacky and is going to attract dirt. And all I do is work it in the zipper a couple of times, just up and back, up and back. It spreads that wax into all the teeth as you go up and back. Like I said, you could use a candle for this too and just rub a little wax on there. It'll lubricate. It'll also waterproof it a little bit. And that's all I do if I'm going to. And I don't do that every time. It's only if I notice any sticking or binding. When I was out hiking, you know, I take note of my zipper sticking, or if right now I just run it up and back and I see how the teeth are and I look to see if there's any dirt in them. Same thing with the outside of the pack. As I was unpacking everything, I'm looking through and I'm seeing if there's any dirt, anything that needs to be brushed off. And I would do the same thing. I can take a bandana and wipe off just some dirt. Maybe it's just surface dirt. I don't mind the little staining or dirt on that. To me, it gives your pack character. It shows that it's been out there living adventures and being loved. But if you are worried about your pack and staining or something like that, you can use the same thing. You can wet the bandana, maybe rub it in, because they usually are pretty durable, the material, and you're going to be able to get that off. If you have a bristle brush, like I said, a nylon bristle brush, you can sometimes work that out. Most dirt, if it's like mud or something, it's going to cake up and dry, and then when you brush it, it usually flakes right off. It might leave a little outline of a stain. If you want to, you can use a little bit of water, plain water, or if you want to use something very neutral like a dishwashing soap, nothing that's going to be too harsh or too chemically. You do want to be careful. Sometimes you have a coating that's on the outside of your pack. If there's a durable water-resistant coating, a DWR, you want to be careful about using that on your backpack because it could influence or affect how effective that is in the future. You know, you may end up washing, if you wash a big section, you may end up stripping that water repellency off. So just be careful and mindful of that. So here I am, I'm in my main pouch or the pocket of the backpack. So here's the other items I'm going to deal with later on. Here's my tent. And I have a liner in here, which I'm going to open up. And it allows me, I mean, I could probably pull the liner out all together. But here is, I'm just going to move this out of the way. And I've already taken out some items like my jacket, my shell, I have gloves. But here's my backpack. Carries, here I just pulled out my sleeping bag. And I'm going to deal with this a little later too. So all the big items. Here I'm just pulling out the whole liner that's in here. And it carries everything else that I had up with me. So it's got my sleep system in it. I did lose a compression sack while I was out there. I don't know what happened to it. Maybe on the really windy day it blew away. I'm going to have to replace that. I made a mental note already that I need to go online and probably order one, or I may already have one that'll fit. Here's all my other gear. So what I'm doing is I'm making sure that everything is empty. Here's my gas canister I used. My my stove, my cookware. Here's this. So now I have this pack. This is the liner, and I'm just emptying it out. Sometimes I even turn it inside out just to make sure it's all dry. There's nothing in here that's going to get dirty or stay in there, and didn't leave any food, any residue, any staining. But I'm really worried about just dirt, twigs, dry leaves, things like that. My pack is now empty. The only thing I still have on here is my Garmin. I'm going to disconnect this from its tether so that it's not weighing it down. I'm aware of all the straps, and what I want to do is I want to go through everything. I want to look at all these straps. I want to look at all these clips. I want to make sure none of them are really dirty. None of them have broken or failed. Sometimes they get little hairline cracks just from impacting something. Maybe you got banged into something and you dropped it. You just want to make sure. I pretty much know from daily use what's going on with the pack. So I'm not real worried about it. But I'm just going to do a real quick inventory and look at it and see if there's anything that's really dirty. I especially want to take a look at the hip belt. That's where you get a lot of wear and tear on it. You know, and this one happens to have a lot of Velcro. You get debris caught in there. Sometimes it gets frayed. I want to make sure all these straps that are hanging down are in good shape and serviceable. One of the problems I have with like the outside of this tent, one of the problems I have with the outside of this pack is it has this huge stretchy pocket, which I absolutely love. This is one of the things I like about it. One of the bad things about this is you tend to overstuff it and stretch it out. As you can tell, it also contacts outside a lot. It's got some staining in it, I can see, but it has like a couple of pulls on it where the material is ripped or torn. There's probably not much you can really do about that. If it gets real bad, sometimes you can contact the manufacturer of your pack and they will replace that or fix it. Or they may have, you could put a couple of stitches in here just to reinforce that to keep it going good. These tears I'm not too worried about. There are a couple of pulls. Could have came in contact with a rock or a tree or twig while I was walking and it got pulled. So I'm not worried about it right now. But like, for instance, this is an Osprey backpack. It's got a lifetime warranty in terms of, workmanship and stuff. And I have had this pack repaired by Osprey 2-3 years ago. I had a part of the backpack that failed. I contacted them, I took pictures and sent them to them, and I shipped the backpack back, and they fixed it at no cost to me, except for shipping it to them. Now, obviously, the backpack is a little heavy and it's bulky. It's an oversized item, so you want to be careful about shipping it back. because it's expensive. It could be, I think it was like $50 almost to ship it. And, you know, it cost me almost $200, or its value is about $200. So you want to make sure that it's insured for that in case something happens to it. And you want to take everything off of it. You don't want to ship it back with anything on it. If it's a part that you can actually remove and ship back alone, like a hip belt, then just send that alone. But let them make sure that they'll usually give you directions on what to do for it in terms of shipping, and maybe ways you can save some money. They'll ship it back to you usually at their cost, but shipping it to them is your responsibility. So this zipper is working good. I'm not going to lube it up. So while you're doing this, maybe you notice an item that needs to be addressed, or you notice a part that's dirty. You can do this now, or you can do it later. Just make a mental note to do it, or maybe you'll do it when you're done, because you're going to have several other items you're going to need to clean, and you don't want to do it, you know, all different times. You want to do it all at the same time. But at least you know what's going on with your pack, and you're aware of what's going on with it. If you do need to ship your backpack back for repair or service, you want to reach out to them before you do so. Don't just send it out to them. Make sure you get an authorization number or an RMA. A lot of times they'll send you a shipping label. They may even pay for it, but you want to know that in advance. They'll also give you steps that you can do to prep it for shipping it back. For instance, you would generally want to wash the backpack. And if your backpack's really dirty or really smelly, you may want to do that anyway. I've done this a couple of times. I did it to ship it back. I do it in my bathtub sometimes. I'll fill it up with cold water. I just use water alone. I don't use hot water because I don't want to damage any of the colors. I don't want them to run, so I just use cold water and I swish it around, and you'll be amazed at how dirty and that water will get and some of the stuff that will come out of it. Even though it looks, you know, oh, there's nothing left in here, there's a lot of dirt caught in there, and that'll come out with the water. I've hosed it off in my backyard just with a running hose. You can hose it down and then put it out in the sun to dry for a couple of minutes. The sun does a great job at drying stuff. So, but at least you know it's clean. I want to pay particular attention to the straps that go around my body, because that's where the wear and tear is, the friction. It's also where the odors and the smell, the bacteria from the sweat are going to get. You're going to get salt stains on the shoulders, on the shoulder straps, and the hip belt. So those are the areas that I generally look at. I want to see there's no wear and tear. And I have some wear. I mean, I can see that it's been used. This backpack has been in a couple of ventures, but it's in good shape still. So even though like some of the writing is rubbed off, the padding itself is good. It feels soft and spongy still. It doesn't feel like it's laden with sweat or odor, or it's very, very wet. Like if it got rained on and it's holding moisture, you wouldn't want that. And put, you know, so pretty much I'm satisfied with my backpack the way it is. I'm not going to have to clean it, and I have no damage that I want to contact the manufacturer and find out what to do. Look on the manufacturer's website. They'll usually have a section on how to care for your item. Like if you're going to wash it, they may recommend the particular product, especially if it has a water repellency coating. That you may want to reinforce that or refresh that if it's been several years. Maybe it's not shedding water like it used to. So they may recommend a product that you can use. And obviously I would follow and heed that advice, because that's what the manufacturer recommends. But if not, I just use plain water. I generally do not use any soap of any kind. The only thing I might do is spot treat an area that I noticed was a stain, and I might spot treat that with a little soap if water alone was not taking care of it. I mentioned that you may want to wipe it down. If you wipe it down, you just want to make sure it dries before you put it away. If the pack is already wet, like I said, you got rained on, or maybe some of the, almost all these things are foam, and some of them will soak up water like a sponge. You want to make sure they're dry. I like to put my pack out in the sun. The sun does a great job of not only drying stuff with its great heat and it's free, it also helps kill bacteria. So I like to put my stuff out in the sun. And there's a lot of people that don't like doing this. They feel the sun destroys and breaks down the fabric, the UV rays are damaging. But, I'm not going to put it out there for a week. I'm going to put it out there for however long it takes to dry. Sometimes that's only 5 or 10 minutes. Sometimes that might be 20 or 30 minutes. But it's generally not going to be much more than that. So what I do is I just generally place it so the areas, especially these areas that come in contact with my body that pick up all the salt and the sweat and bacteria that I'm worried about, I want them to be facing the sun so that the rays get in them and they dry out. So I'm going to lay it out in the sun like this. and I'm going to let it stay there for however long I think it needs. If it's dry already, I might just put it out there for 5 or 10 minutes just to warm it up, make sure there's no moisture stuck inside these things, even though I don't feel any, and I also kill some bacteria. If it's really wet, I'm going to leave it out there until I feel it's dry. I don't feel that that's any more risky than me going out on a hike, wearing my backpack, and the sun is shining on my back. If the sun's shining on my back while I'm hiking, the UV rays are hitting the backpack anyway. These things are meant to be used. They're meant to go outside. You don't need to hide them away in the dark, you know. But I know there's a lot of people that, you know, frown upon that. And I do the same thing with my tent, and that's where a lot of people are like, oh my God, you don't want your tent set up because the UV rays are destroying the tent. Well, if I set my tent up in the field for a week's trips, it's being exposed to UV rays all day while it's set up. What can I do about that? You know, it is what it is. So I'm not going to worry about it. I don't think that 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 minutes even of sunlight is going to really destroy this backpack. If it is, I'm going to have to replace it anyway. If it's that delicate, it's not going to last me long. But I haven't had any trouble yet, and I don't think that small exposure is going to make a big difference in the lifetime of the item. So I've gone through the pack, I've cleaned it all. If there were any places that I found that were damaged, I'm going to make note of them. If there's parts I need to order, if there's an email or a phone call I need to make to the manufacturer, I'm going to do that. But once I've decided, okay, if I scrubbed anything and I got it damp, I put it outside, I let it dry. Next, I'm going to bring my pack inside. I want to put it somewhere where I know it's going to stay clean and not be in the way. That could be a problem with storage. I used to keep my stuff out in the garage, and that's actually a terrible place to put it because it's exposed to both cold weather and heat, and it generally does not do well for camping items. Especially, these are expensive items, let's face it. Nobody wants to go out and spend another $200 or $250 or even $300 on a backpack. So now I keep them in my house somewhere where it's climate controlled, it's not exposed to heat or cold, and it's also moisture controlled. I generally leave my pack outside for a couple of days, even after I've gone through it, because I want that hiker smell to try and get out. So I might leave it out here where it's protected from the sun and the weather, just sitting on a table or a chair or on a bench where it can air out for a couple of days. If not, I may even just do that in my house, in a living room or in a corner where it can just air out for a couple of days and get some airflow around it. So I know it's good and dry, and some of that odor, that hiker smell, has gone away. After that, I'm going to store it. The best thing you can do is to store it flat, maybe, laying down. If you have a peg or a hook or something that you can hook it up to using its strap, they all have this strap, and you can let it hang on there. But there's no items in here, there's no stress on it, and it'll allow it to maintain its shape. Nothing will get bent or twisted out, and it'll stay, hopefully, smelling good and dry. So that's going to be it for this episode. Hopefully I haven't forgotten anything when it comes to caring for your backpack. And these are generalities. Each backpack may have unique features. There may be certain things that are unique to them or that the manufacturer recommends, or steps that you might need to do to maintain your individual pack. But I think I've covered most of the basics. Just make sure you don't forget anything. If it has a water bladder in it, definitely want to take that out. If there's a pocket for a water bladder, definitely want to go through that and make sure it's out. Don't leave your water bladder in there. It'll be a mildewy mess when you get back to it. Algae or something will be growing it. And generally, it's stained or it's going to smell bad, and you might not be able to get that smell or taste out of the bladder. Other than that, there's not much really to do on most backpacks. They're pretty resilient, and they'll service you a long time. You spent money on this gear. Hopefully, if it's working for you, you want to keep using it and keep it going on adventures with you. And this is the way to do it. This doesn't take long. It took me a long time because I'm talking and explaining it, but dumping out your gear can be really fast about turning it upside down and just pouring everything out. Or you could take it out gingerly like I did and go through it. But it's up to you. If you just, 10 minutes maybe is enough to usually empty out your backpack and just have it empty with all the stuff, and maybe just give it a look over. And like I said, because I'm generally using the backpack every day when I'm on the trail, I know if straps are worn or not. But you want to make a note of what needs to be done on it, and don't put that off too long, because it's real easy to say, oh, I'll order a replacement clip, and then you forget about it. Life gets in the way all the time. And then, maybe your friend calls you up, hey, you want to go hiking this weekend or camping? And you go to grab your gear, and maybe you forget that that thing was broken until you get on the trail. That could be a problem. Or now you realize, oh, yeah, my hip belt broke, and I don't have one. What am I going to do now? Am I going to tie a rope around me? Or how am I going to make this work? And you may not be able to, the last minute, get a replacement item, especially some items are not very common. They're not stocked by stores. There are always replacement little clips like these available, and you can generally find something and make it work. But something like a hip belt clip, which may be a larger size, might be a little harder to find. Or, if the padding is worn or a pocket is ripped, that's going to take a little longer to find and maybe order, and you may have to ship it to you. It could be, 2 weeks or 3 weeks or even 5 or 6 weeks if it's a very unique item that's not commonly stocked. So those are my suggestions for care. This is what I do every single hike when I come home. I try not to put it off too much. Sometimes it's hard, but the more you get in the habit of doing this, I come home in like 5-10 minutes, I'm done. My pack is empty. All the gear is out. Now the hard part is, for me, not to leave this pile of gear sitting here for several days. Now that, I admit, I am guilty of. And that's a harder challenge because I took care of the backpack, but now I have all this stuff sitting here. What do I do with it? And that's really for you to decide how long or what you're going to do with it, because do you leave it all packed in your backpack? So if you know you're going back out again, or you like to keep your backpack ready, and there are people that do that, their backpack is always ready to go, then load everything back into your backpack the way you like it. But as you're doing so, look through your items. Maybe I want to take my stove and clean it and my kitchen and make sure the pot and even the measuring cup is clean. I may want to wash it. Maybe even run it through a dishwasher. I don't know. See what worked for you. I want to wash I used this on the trail. It got dirty. I wiped my tent stakes with it. I blew my nose with it. Maybe I cleaned up a spill when I was eating with it. So I want to wash this so that it's ready to use again. So all my clothes, this is all clothes that I wore on the trip, spare socks. I'm going to wash these, but I don't want to leave it sitting in my backpack for like 5-6 months till I get to it, and it's a funky mess when I do that. So that's why this step is so important to me, because it forces you to deal with this. Here's a hat. I was looking for this. Look at the dirt, the leaves that are coming out here. I am making a mess here, but it's outside my house. I'm not worried about it. Luckily, I did not see any bugs come out. I have frequently had mosquito. A spider is really common. They get in there and you just forget they're there. Ants, caterpillars, ticks, a lizard. I've never had a snake, but I've heard of people bringing home a snake. And those are things that you want to watch out for. But generally, I'm going to be able to go through my items now. And I'll probably do this tonight after I'm done filming. And I'll actually go through each item. My food is another item that I store in my house, but it's all in my food bag. So now I can go through it. Do I have any garbage that I was carrying on the trail that I left in my food bag? I don't want to leave that in here. I might not go out for another 5 months. What if I'm not going out now? Here, this is garbage. This is all garbage from the trail. It's a used bag, and I have my garbage in here. I would hate to leave this in my backpack for 5 or 6 months. If I squeeze it, the air's coming out of it, I can smell it. I'm sure if I left this in my house, some ants or some other bugs might find this too, and I don't want that to happen. So that's going to be it for this episode. If you like what I'm doing and you got some value out of this video, please consider giving me a like or a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the channel if you're not already a subscriber, and leave a comment below. Is there something that you like to do? Is there something that I missed, or a suggestion you have that you find useful, or something that maybe I got wrong and that you do and you have a better suggestion? Please leave a comment below. As always, thank you for taking time out of your day to watch these videos. Till we meet again.